And I said, well, look, I think we spend way too much money on our DoD budget and our military budget, and there's so much waste and fraud that happens because of these contractors. And I think we should write a bill together to empower the Inspector General to claw back that money and research that money and figure out where that's going. And he said yes. And so we have a bill together on that that is about reining in that money from the DoD. So really it's about having conversations and coming close together. But the caveat I have to add is, number one, it's easier said than done. And number two, I would never ask somebody to sit across the table from somebody who denies their existence or hates their existence, etc. I'd never encourage a trans person to sit across from Marjorie Taylor Greene. In fact, I don't work with Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I probably never will have a bill with her. Right?
Oh, damn.
So there's certain people that I'm just not going to work with on bills. But there's a lot of people in Congress, 435 members, so there's a lot of opportunity.
Can I ask a question? I'm so curious. So I believe it's still the fact that you're the youngest person in Congress, right? That doesn't change. It's not a 22-year-old that's
not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah. Okay. So I feel like, because you're younger than me, I feel like everybody would go to Congress and you're like, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to go bully all these guys into my correct positions. I'm going to get all this work done. It's going to be awesome. What are one or two things that you went in thinking this is what I'm going to do? And you're like, oh man, actual lawmaking and legislating is not what I expected it to be. Have you had any of those moments? What are a couple really big things that a lot of people see? Because a lot of people see a young guy going in and it's like, bro, where's our socialized healthcare? Where's our 15-hour minimum wage? Why haven't you done it yet? I thought you were representing us. Yeah.
So I'll tell you this. That's I'm going to answer in reverse real quick. So what you just brought up, it's more of a thing nationally, right? So I'll post a tweet about a bipartisan bill I have. That's a step forward. It's not Medicare for all, which I believe strengthening Medicare in some sort of way, expanding it in some sort of way, right? And sometimes people on Twitter or something like that will be like, well, what about Medicare for all? You're not real progressive, blah, blah, blah. But I'll tell you, I don't really get that a lot from people in my district because I was very intentional in my campaigning. I think part of the reason why 50% of this country doesn't vote and why so many people believe government doesn't work for them, because a lot of times it doesn't, is because politicians have been lying for generations saying, vote for me and this will happen. And it's been a problem on the left and the right. And so when I was running, because I've worked in lobbying and I've been working in the sphere of Congress in the past, I knew that I had a better understanding, I would say, than maybe other folks who have first-time candidates of what it takes to really pass a bill and how difficult it is. So believe it or not, I never really promised any legislation in my race. I was very specific in the way I spoke about things. What I promised was a fight for our values, was a fight for these bills. I promised the promises I made were on how I would legislate and how I would co-govern with people in my community, not on vote for me and we're going to have Medicare for all tomorrow. And so I think it was really important because I think if we had more people who campaigned in a way that promised a fight and promised solidarity and didn't promise a bill, I think more people would, in the back of their mind, fully understand that members of Congress, we're advocates, we're organizers, and we're legislators. And, we need, there's 435 people in the institution. In order to pass something, we need that plus one, right? Unless it's some other type of bill. And so I think that setting expectations with my people that I represent, that I'm accountable to in my home, was a really good decision that I'm really happy we did, because now people see us as part of the fight. We're in a celebrity culture where people like to prop up politicians as celebrities. And the problem is that there's not one congressperson who's going to change everything for us. It's not one president that's going to change for everything for us. It's a collective, and organizers, volunteers, electeds, people do mutual aid, artists, people in our culture, we all have a role to play. So either way, that didn't answer exactly what you asked, but it kind of does.
Managing expectations.
When I came in, there hasn't been a ton of situations where I've said, wow, this is, I came in thinking it would be easy and it wasn't. I will say the thing that is proving to be the most challenging, I find, is just being able to operate in a Congress that is just completely in chaos. And for people who don't know, this Congress right now is on track to be the most unproductive Congress in the history of our country, ever.
Yeah.
And so I love this job. I just wish I got to focus on it more, but there's always some sort of crisis or something going on. Meanwhile, I go home and we're dealing with real problems. And we have an existential climate crisis that is here already, and we're, it's tough. It's tough, and that's been the thing that's been the most difficult to deal with, is actually the dysfunction in Congress. So I would say that's the most surprising.
Do you mind if I ask, how do you not become a part of the problem, become a part of the swamp, shall we say, and hold on to those values and those goals you had when you came in as an activist?
Yeah.
Because AOC talked about when she came in that, like, even the orientation was stacked with lobbyists. There were no union reps there. So how do you maintain the real Maxwell Frost as you go through this career?
I think it's all about the people you surround yourself with. And look, I'll tell you, so when I went to orientation, so everyone, like, put yourself in these shoes, right? I went on a Tuesday. You get summoned to orientation. You got to be there on that upcoming Monday. So you fly in on that Sunday. But then I ended up going to New York to do The View, and I took a day off to go. I'm a musician and I'm a huge concert guy. I went to go see one of my favorite bands, and they shouted me out, and just everything was so crazy for that week. I go to orientation, I'm meeting all these other people that are new to Congress. It's just everything is hitting me, and then I come back home after that week. I felt like I was gone for a long time, and I walked into my living room, and I remember having this weird feeling because I kind of forgot what my living room looked like. And that was the moment where I said, this is how it happens. This is how people get elected, and they go, and then they kind of slowly slip away from who they are. So in that moment, I said, I ability with the people in my district, with my staff, with the way we hire our staff, everything, to help make sure that doesn't happen again to me. Because we're only human, right? And it's not that we want people to be perfect inherently, but we want people to figure out what are the things, what are your faults, and how do you build a team that helps you not fall into that. So what I'm trying to say is it's about the people you really surround yourself with. And so we're always in close collaboration and solidarity with our on the ground organizers and organizations in Orlando, which is a big one. And these are friends and people who have no problem slipping, or they like what I'm doing, or et cetera. And even just being in fellowship with them helps me make sure I'm not slipping, and that I'm always focused on Orlando, even though I might be spending a lot of time in DC. So that would be the biggest piece of advice, or biggest thing that I've done, is I hired a team that is a mix of people from home and people who have worked on the Hill. And that's been important, because every day I walk into the office and I literally see people who remind me of home because they're from home. One of our legislative assistants was my field director. He ran my program of knocking doors at home, right? And so building a team and building systems of accountability helps keep you grounded, because it's only human when you spend a lot of time in one place to sometimes, things can, the priorities can change. But what you have to do as a legislator is set up systems of accountability so you can hold yourself accountable, and people have a way to hold you accountable and keep you grounded.
I have a very serious question and then kind of a goofy question. I'm going to start with a very serious question. I saw you were a jazz drummer. Have you ever seen the movie Whiplash?
I have seen Whiplash.
Yes. Okay. And then the goofy question. Okay, so I'm curious, as you come into Congress, how do you balance your responsibility as a Democrat member in Congress that has to vote with the party on big legislative issues versus your responsibility as a congressman from Florida representing the interests of Florida? I understand that this Congress is historically unproductive for reasons that we won't get into, like Republicans. But how do you, have you ever had any of those moments where you're trying to think man, the party needs me on this, but Florida needs me on that? How do you even sort through the correct decision-making process there?
Yeah, and I'll say sometimes it's like that. Sometimes it's the party needs me on this, but maybe I have a values difference on it, or this and that. There's always competing priorities. The biggest one, first and foremost, is my district, and it has to be, right? Oftentimes we kind of categorize all politicians as working for all of us, and we do. And I am accountable to every taxpayer, but not fully. I'm really only accountable to my district, right? Mm-hmm. Because that's why we have this system. So that way we have people who focus on their people. So I am fully accountable to the people, not just the voters, but the humans and animals and everybody of Florida's 10th congressional district. And that's first and foremost my biggest priority. The second one I always think about is the state of Florida and the South generally, because I'm a progressive in the South.